It's a bit, I often liken it to a mobile phone or a computer system or a car, where you haven't got to know about all the little bits of circuitry and all the moving parts. I mean, basically as a user, you're just concerning yourself with, I think, about 4 functions: steering, brake, acceleration, clutch and gear. Is that 5? The rest of it is all going on under the hood, or you imagine what's going on under a computer system that you have no idea what's going on. But that's absolutely nothing compared to what's going on inside of human beings. Because we can think, well, physiologically or biochemically, there is a lot going on. Even if you just look down, say, at the cellular level, one cell, there are probably hundreds of thousands of chemical interactions every single second in just one cell. What to speak of, a multicellular complex organism like what we are. It's just beyond belief, what's happening in terms of all that interaction. And then you add to that we're multi-dimensional beings, interacting not just at the physical dimension, but that and all other levels and dimensions. It's beyond comprehension. But as I often say at the beginning of a lot of these talks, is that we're going to give it a good go to try and explain it and to try and get it across so you understand the thumbnail sketch and you get the basics of what really is going on the inside. But really the key to this is just like driving a car. It's about getting in the seat, just grabbing the steering wheel and just applying the gas and and all of that. And that's a very simple thing. So the practices that we do, which we're going to get into tonight a little bit more than last week, are very simple by nature, but they engage a complex level of machinery, a multi-dimensional level of machinery that's just beyond our comprehension. Yeah, and that's kind of what these talks were about, was really to get people interested and then motivate them along so they could then start to practice. Yeah, that's the way I kind of see these things. And there's a teaching. Did you want to get your cup of tea?
I've got one.
Oh, yeah, oh, right. I was just waiting for the kettle to...
It's for anyone else.
Oh, for anybody else? Does anybody else want a cup of tea? We will have a 1.5 minute break. If you're lucky. Yeah, possibly 45 seconds. I'm going to go through the practices again. I'm going to go into them more deeply, and we'll do an in-depth session with those today. Because we got, me got a little carried away last time with talking, as I often do. So, so I'm going to sort of rein it in a little bit this time and hopefully get a little bit more practical application. Because at the end of the day, we can understand these things and we can really rationalize and get a clear concept in our head as to what all this is about. And yet, without the practical application, that's not going to further our enlightenment. It won't help us one iota. In fact, too much of this information, too much knowing around all of this can actually operate as a brake or as a barrier actually to awakening consciousness. And we tend to then intellectualize and rationalize and look at it from that perspective only. And it's really the practices that are the key, because the practices that will show you your own inner workings, your own mechanism. I'll give you an example from this last week, actually just from 2 or 3 nights back. I had a really bad night. I had this night where I had, I think, 3 nightmares. It was really great. I haven't had such a good evening in a long time, I can tell you. But I woke up out of the first nightmare, which was absolutely horrendous. And I was thinking, gosh, what was that about? And I never have nightmares, I hardly ever do. And I thought, well, I'm just going to breathe, and I'm going to go into the third eye space. So there's a way to open the third eye through the use of the breath. So I just did this, went into the third eye space. And I saw a couple of demons in the room. And immediately I could see them. And one of them came up to me and put his nose onto my nose. So he was looking at me eye to eye. And he was a human, and I could tell he was a human being. He'd existed on the earth at some point. You can kind of get a sense of what it is that you're looking at. It's hard to describe, but you just know what it is when you're looking at things through the eye. It's as if the information is also coming to you along with the visual impressions. It's hard to say how that happens. It feels more like a gut or an intuitive feeling that it just is true. So I knew these characters actually were earthlings at one time. They weren't from another dimension or another realm somewhere that we're visiting. So they were here really picking on me for some reason. I have that. I think, why me? You know? What have I done this week? But I've been going through a detox these last 3 weeks, and I've been doing lots of detoxification, physical detoxification, and it put me into a really quite strange space with my head, my brain actually, where I was quite kind of dulled out and quite tired and quite worn out and depleted, and I think quite vulnerable and open to this sort of attack. It never normally happens. So I was looking at them here and I was thinking, okay, I can see these guys. There was one behind and there was one forward, and they were kind of just standing there looking at me. And for some reason I went back to sleep. I thought, well, they don't really pose much of a threat, really, so I'm just going to ignore them and hope they go away, but they didn't, and I got another nightmare. So then I woke up after that nightmare, and I thought, oh, God, I've got to do something about these guys, and I went into the third eye space again, and I thought, God, it's really disturbing me. And I saw them there again, and the other one came forward this time. He was even more menacing than the other guy, and I thought, oh, I'm going to have to sort them out now and get rid of them so I can get a decent night's sleep. I don't know, for some reason I went back to sleep. And I did have another nightmare. And then I woke up and it was morning, so I thought, okay, well, I'm not even going to bother with these guys anymore. Hopefully they've moved on. And sure enough, they had. But for me, in a way, it took the whole stigma of fear out of this, the whole scenario. Because practicing these techniques, it taught me how to actually go into that third eye space, how to look at these entities and beings. And I do it with clients as well. When I'm working with them, I can see ancestors, angels, and also elemental beings. They're just faces of things that appear, and sometimes it's lights. And it's lovely and it's nice, and it's a confirmation of what's actually really going on. Because we are multidimensional, there's no doubt. We are multidimensional, and at our core is our essence. We are spiritual beings. And none of these things, and I've experienced probably quite a lot of these things over the last 20, 25 years, can possibly harm or hurt us in any way whatsoever. At all. We are so, what's the word here? Sovereign in our essence. And if we only could just taste that and realise that, then we would absolutely have no fear of any of this. It was a bit like how I woke up and kept getting these horrible nightmares, and it was just like, oh well, here we go again. It's just like, c'est la vie, go back to sleep. I couldn't even be bothered. Just couldn't. I thought, no, why even bother with these guys? They're not even worth bothering with. So yeah, so it's quite often the way. So anyway, today's talk.
What did they want from you?
Well, the first time I woke up, I asked the question, what is this about? Because the nightmare was pretty horrendous. I was thinking, what was that trying to show me or tell me? And I have absolutely no idea. I have no idea. It's a bit vague now. But because I didn't go into the inquiry and I just went back to sleep, I didn't pursue that thread. So I don't know. But my sense was they were menacing, and they were really looking for an open door or a vulnerability, and I was feeling quite vulnerable at that time because of all the fasting and the diet that I've been following.
So they wanted your energy?
I think they wanted the fear energy. I think they wanted me to be frightened of them, and they wanted to be nourished by that energy. I often find it's the way. Whatever comes in the form of a dream or in that shape, it's cultivating a certain quality of energy that then they're harvesting off you, they're nourishing, and it feeds them. And that gives them more power, again, in turn, to actually infiltrate and to impose their will upon you even further. So it becomes a perpetual downward cycle, where it starts with small things, and then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as time passes by. You find this with haunted buildings, and with people that are open to entities. As at first, it's quite innocuous. Small things, you could almost ignore them. And then it becomes a little more pronounced, and it's like, oh, maybe something here. And then over time, a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, because the energy of your own fear and anxiety is feeding into them, and they're gaining strength and momentum from that. But if you more or less did what like I did the other night, was, so what, just go back to sleep. It's like game over, you just ignored them, and that's the worst thing they want, because you're not giving them anything. They may try again, as they did, but they won't get in, and they won't get any energy. So the key really is practices. Practice, 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 and this is the key really for me as well, because it's very hard as we stand on our own to actually be disciplined enough and structured enough and to continuously work at these practices long enough. I mean, how many here, for example, have taken up a course of practice and found that actually after some time it sort of peters out? Nobody?
Yeah.
Oh, you have, Lucy?
That's my life's been like that.
Oh, your whole life? So one practice after another, after another, after another. So just trying different things. Yeah, okay. Is that a common experience for most of us here? Yeah. Yeah, for me too. Yeah. I guess these practices and these things I've been doing for some years, and they have their roots that go back even further for me, because I started with this when I was about 18. So there's a thread there, but there's been times when I've completely left it, put aside. And there's been times I've even rejected it all, and gone on another branch and another search and another inquiry, and then come back to it. And I think that's natural and that's healthy and that's organic, just filtering and sifting. But the experience actually can tell you what is the truth, more than the mind and the intellect. I often like to say our gnosis, or our inner knowing, in this day and age is obfuscated by belief. So it's as if our inner knowing, our inner wisdom, is put aside in preference for a belief structure or some ideas. And we tend to give more weight and more energy to what we believe than we do trust and energy to what we actually know. Isn't it? Yeah? That's how we are in the Western world, because we're very much here over in the left brain. We are a left brain society, we're a left brain culture. I'll get into this in a little while, because I'm going to do a little bit of a recap for Colin and Joe, I think. And maybe Sylvia, if you've forgotten everything. Yeah. So we're going to do a quick recap through samskaras. We didn't really touch upon it last week, but I think I'll go into that a little bit more this week. But before we start, I want to get back into the practice, which is to start with using sound. And this is a new thing for some of these guys here that weren't here last week, but I introduced this idea of mantra. Now, who's familiar with this? Who's not familiar, rather, with this term? Mantra. Everybody knows what this is. It's a Sanskrit word. It literally means mind tool. Now, the idea of all disciplines and all practices, and I don't care what they are, and I said this last week, it doesn't matter what faith, what tradition, what culture, what religion, they all are supposed to be doing the same thing. And they all target the same mechanism within us human beings. And that mechanism, as I was disclosing last week, is the central nervous system. Every single process, technique, or any kind of worship or ceremony or ritual always works on the central nervous system. And the effectiveness of the system is the degree to which it has an impact on this system, on the central nervous system. Some will touch upon it lightly, some will touch upon it here and there, some will meander around it, some more profound. But by far the most powerful that I have found is the use of sound and the use of breath that takes us into the ultimate expression of spirituality, which is stillness. This is the goal of all of it, and I don't know if anybody knows a process whereby they could refute that, but I would say absolutely when we are in stillness, we are in our heart center, we are in our spiritual axis, we are here and present. And basically we are one with the divine and also one with earth. We're connected, we're plugged in. And the feeling of that is stillness inside. Now that, in terms of our incarnatory experience here on earth, is the most difficult thing for our head particularly to wrap itself around. Does anybody here have any difficulties with meditating and going into stillness? Not looking at you particularly, Jane.
Yes.
I mean, it's a common thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we all have, and we have good days and bad days with that. I have that when I meditate, and I find there are days when, wow, I feel like, gosh, I've got it now. Got my mind like a laser beam here. I'm focused, and I can maintain it and focus, and I can go into stillness really well. And other days where, boy, oh boy, it's everywhere. It's like, I can't gather my thoughts up even if I'm trying my hardest. It just does not work. So the key process here is to take the central nervous system to stillness as fast and as rapidly and as effectively as possible. Now, to just go be still, I find never work for me, and that's why I tend to avoid those kind of processes where you go along to a hall of people or a group of people or a meeting and we're just sitting there in silence. I tend to just think, I'm finding it really hard this. I find it really hard just to go from busy to just be still. Now the idea here is that we're not going to do that. We're going to prepare the psyche, we're going to prepare the mind through a stepping process where we step down into stillness. And this prepares the nervous system for that experience because the nervous system basically is primed. The nervous system actually is designed, you could say, in its essence, for stillness. So it has a proclivity, for that experience. And yet, all of our experiences are completely diametrically and totally the opposite of that. So why is it that we're designed for stillness? And I often use the phraseology, we are enlightenment machines. We are enlightenment machines. Everything we do is because we think it's going to be beneficial to our enlightenment, no matter what it is, even if it's the most perverse, the most bizarre, and the most out of integrity behavior. It's like we do it because we think this is going to be good for us, right? Hardly anybody, I don't think, does anything because they think it's going to be like really destructive and bad, on our well-being. And yet, a lot of the time we're caught up in these cycles of bad behavior and destructive activity, even in terms of our thinking, our feelings. Where is that rooted? Where is that coming from? And we will get to that this time. Don't you worry, Joe, we'll get to it this time. Yeah, and Colin. It is a 2-hour talk that I'm going to compress down to about 10 minutes. Yeah, because most of the people here have covered that in depth. And we've done that in depth. And I am thinking to do that series again when I get enough interest, and maybe for some people here that have done it the first time through, whether they want to even maybe review it a second time through. So I may do that again. And I am even thinking possibly to do all 3 talks at once. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll start at 7 and we'll finish about 1 or 2 in the morning. Yeah.
Nightmares.
Yeah.
Is it right you need 20 minutes gap for it to assimilate, and then you get another 20 minutes and,
Yeah, I was thinking of doing this at a workshop.
Oh yeah, even on the workshop, I guess.
So you get like a whole afternoon of it.
One thing that still in mind they did at Osho Lila was if you talk gibberish for 15 minutes at least, and then stop.
That's my philosophy.
And then it goes blank, I don't know. That's really my setup. That's it. I can't make my head.
Yeah.
That's interesting in that word.
Yeah. Okay.
Do that most of the time anyway.
Oh, well, no, it's good. You can just go, but the mind doesn't try to analyse it. If you can't analyse what's going on, it almost goes.
It will help. Yeah, it's another tool and technique.
Yeah.
So there are lots of tools, processes, and techniques out there. Don't get me wrong. But it brings me to and I'll get to them momently, so it brings me to my second inquiry here, which is which system on this planet through all of time, and I don't know all the systems yet, and I don't know all of them all of time, but which systems that am I aware of that I have access to that have produced the most enlightened beings by quality and by quantity? Because those are the systems that are really working. Can you see? So someone will come to me and say, oh, this is an amazing process, this is a fantastic process, this is that and the other. And I say, well, okay, how has it worked for the person that's devised this? Well, are they enlightened? I mean, are they coming from that place? I mean, how many people that have applied this process over the last, say, 20, 30, 40 years have reached, quite an elevated platform, if not an enlightened platform? How has it worked? And to be honest, I do find that a lot of these processes, they claim a lot more than what they can deliver. And I hope today that we're going to be able to deliver a lot more than what I can make claims for. Yeah. In fact, if anything, with these practices, we have to put on the brakes. And that's what I call self-pacing. Otherwise, we will overcook our central nervous system. We'll try to force it and push too much energy through it, and that can cause a lot of emotional trauma and a lot of emotional pain to surface that can be very overwhelming and difficult for us to deal with. So we have to monitor ourselves and self-pace ourselves proportionately. Otherwise, these processes will blow your head off. They are strong. Lisa?
Yeah, just wanted to say that getting to this point of stillness, like you say, isn't a really important part of it, relaxation.
It's a really important part.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Because that never clicked for me in the past, sort of looking into spiritual stuff. It felt almost like that was missed out. Somehow there was just this empty stillness. But whilst you're in a body, I've realised like the way, all different ways to get there. But first of all, there are things that trigger relaxation that then you naturally come to a place of stillness through, and that's a gentle process. And
it's wonderful.
it used to be terrifying for me before, just emptiness and like
Yes.
I would do anything to resist it.
Yes.
But that happens naturally when you're younger, or
Yes.
if you're nurtured. That when you feel safe,
a baby.
you come into that. It's just and that's I'm finally starting to realise that, or through things like EFT tapping.
Oh yes.
ASMR, which are triggers that relax your body, but it ultimately just takes you to stillness. But it's beautiful. It's like you feel that you're craving that,
Yes, that's it. We are craving it. We are absolutely craving it because it's in the stillness that we're nourished.
And that's the bit that was missing. That's the bit, somehow from the way through the patriarchal view or the masculine view of spirituality, missed out the nurturing bit.
The feminine.
And I was, feminine, and
exactly.
I was like, I'm going there, it feels horrible. I just couldn't get it because that was missing.
Yeah.
But then that's very inviting. Then that's, actually I do need that.
You absolutely do, yeah. Once you taste this, there's nothing like it. I mean, there are degrees and depths to the stillness. So, when you dive in there and you taste that stillness, it's actually blissful. It's blissful. In this work that I'm doing here, we follow the masculine and the feminine paths, as you know. And the masculine path, we say, is the path of consciousness and bliss. And the feminine path is the path of energy, which is also matter, because matter is just energy condensed, energy, and ecstasy. But stillness is a coming together of the masculine and feminine. So it brings bliss and ecstasy together into what we call ecstatic bliss. And ecstatic bliss is really what we're all hankering for. Is it not? I mean, I don't care about book knowledge if I'm in a state of ecstatic bliss. I'm not even worried about money, which is quite a thing. Not to be worried about that. But if you're in a state of ecstatic bliss, you get things, your whole life gets put into a perspective that actually you see things as they really are, and just how trivial and insignificant perhaps a lot of our anxieties and concerns are.
You don't need anything then.
You don't.
You are full.
Totally full. And
then
everything you're searching.
You watch everything.
You've obviously experienced that.
I've had a taste, but obviously, I on it, and I'm really grateful that you're bringing that, or that I'm finally hearing that in relation to spirituality.
Yeah, thank you.
I always thought it was this emptiness, and to me that's the way I perceived it. It's just nothing. Exactly opposite of what you're saying. It's like, and then I was just starving in that space. Like, I don't want to be alone. I want to feel something good. There must be some goodness or love, And so so I'm very, very grateful for that.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. In the Sanskrit, they call it anandamaya bhyasat, which means that we are eternally seeking pleasure. We're eternally seeking. We're pleasure-seeking beings. I know you are, aren't you, Colin?
Absolutely.
More than most.
That's the orgasmic experience is probably the highest.
Yes.
One of the highest.
Yes.
Yes. And but I mean, it's interesting. The body can remember pain, but it doesn't remember
We'll get to that in a
pleasure.
minute. We'll get, Let's talk one.
Oh, is it? Oh, right. Yeah. There's
we'll get to that in a minute.
bad design. I mean, I was having
No, it was a bad design.
If someone just caressed you and you walk down the high street and you're in bliss, and you say, "What happened?" Well, my friend caressed me an hour ago and I'm still in bliss,
Yes.
I mean, that would be better, wouldn't it? But if you stub your toe, you remember that for an hour, but it's not such a useful experience.
Well, no.
It's like, as you say, we're drawn to sort of, fear and all worries.
Yes, so we'll get into that in a little while.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at that. I haven't forgotten, Lucy. Actually, go for it.
Well, ecstatic bliss. When
Yes.
I experience that, I don't get much done. I don't think I could actually...
No.
I don't think that's the goal, is it? It's not...
Yeah, I was going
Can't
to. I was
stay
going to. I was
like
going to go a little
It's
further with
quite-
that.
It's quite draining.
Okay.
I couldn't stay with that. It would
No.
deplete me.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
No, I feel. Yeah, there's another level to this which I need to maybe talk about. And I was going to touch upon it. When you go into the stillness and you go into that profoundly deep place of stillness, which you might say is ecstatic or blissful or ecstatically blissful, there is a movement from that place out. In Sanskrit, they call this samyana. Where's my eightfold model? I'm doubling up on posters here because I didn't have enough room here for posters. It must be here. Oh, didn't even bother to put it up. All right. Bloody hell. I'm sure I did. That's an important one.
There's another one.
Oh, yeah. There's one here. No, that's the aura.
There's another one
There's
behind
another
that.
behind there.
Oh, there's two behind this one.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. So it's samyana. This one here. So what happens, and I will get to this in 2 posters' time. What happens with samyana is basically there's a process whereby we go inward in meditation. So this is the processes of the eightfold system. You can look at it while I'm talking, and you'll get an idea of this, Lucy, and everybody else, I suppose, as well. Let me just get this out of the way for now. I wanted to talk about time this week, but I don't know if I'll have the time. It's a whole talk actually that I'm thinking to do. I've only ever given it once. Okay, I want to do that here in Totnes, so I might do that next time if we have time for that. But let's see. Okay, this is the eightfold process. So this is a process which is defined by the ancients, and we're familiar with this as the Ashtanga system. And this is the system more or less that we're loosely going to be following in terms of these practices. Now we don't do it all from 1 to 8. We don't follow all 8 even at any given time. But they are there as a reference. And what we're doing here really in terms of practices is what's called an integrated approach. An integrated approach means is that basically we do it all at once, at the same time, in an integrated way. See, traditionally you would start here, number 1, then go to number 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And by the time maybe you were about 60 or 70 years old, you would hit the 8th one, which is Samadhi. So it would be a lifelong process, years and years and years spent with the master, spent in the ashrams, usually in India, doing each step in the process that you would move through systematically. Okay, so we're not doing that, because it would take too long, right? So a much better way to do this is through an integrated approach, whereby basically we're going to do all of this all at once. And it's also much more powerful, right? And we're going to focus on certain aspects of this that will actually cultivate other parts of our nervous system automatically. So for those that weren't here last week, this is a fortnight ago, this first stage here is what's called the restraint. So when we engage in a spiritual process or spiritual life, we're looking initially, at least traditionally when you were living in India, as to what you can't do, what is forbidden to do. So there's all these rules and regulations, yeah, right? Then we have what's called the niyamas, which are the observances. So when you can get to the point of stopping doing destructive or violent stuff to yourself and other people, then you can actually then start to go to observances. These are the things you can do, and you must do now. So these are the positive things that will nourish your soul, once you stop doing the destructive things that are harming you. Can you see? And then from there we would move into cultivating asanas, which we're familiar with from yoga here in the West, which is the feminine aspect of the body, which is starting to condition our central nervous system. Did everybody look at the last page of the brochure I handed out last time? Was anybody scratching their head about that, as to what that was about? Because we didn't cover it.
What, the little postures?
Yes, the postures.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't cover it at all, right?
No, but they were cute little
They were
drawings.
cute, yeah. I didn't put them on there for a bit of a giggle. They were meant for some serious processing we're going to do eventually, I hope, if we get to that. Yeah. But the idea of asanas really is to bring flexibility and subtlety to the spine, particularly the spine, and to our central nervous system, to prepare it for what comes next, which is pranayama. which is then the breath restraint and the breath control. This works powerfully with the central channel or the central nerve in our spine called the Sushumna. I'm sure we've all heard of this. What Tantra and Tantrics are really looking to work with is the energy in the spine. At the base of this you have Kundalini. So the pranayama activates the Kundalini, activates the energy within our subtle anatomy, our subtle nervous system. And that has a direct correlation with our physical nervous system. The two systems, if you like, are intermeshed and working together. Yeah? So as we work with pranayama, we bring a lot of energy and a lot of force, you might say, to bear upon that Sushumna Nadi, Sushumna channel, that central nerve, our spinal nerve. Once we practice that, then we can move into focus, which is dharana. This is where we bring our mind into singularity, into focus on the inside. A lot of yogis, they often depicted as focusing on the tip of their nose. Have you seen this where they're slightly crossed-eyed? Like that? Or, as I did the other night, I put my focus here onto the third eye chakra. And by breathing and focusing at the same time, this opens. Then we go further into dhyana, which is meditation. And this is what the ancients called dhyana, which is entering into the stillness. So here we hold a focus in the mind, because the ancients knew that actually the mind is very busy, and it requires something that can grab hold of, something that can be a focal point for it. So we can choose something as a worshipful object, you might say, a deity or an archetype or something like this, and we can focus upon it, hold it in the mind. And then here we let go of it, we dissolve the object. Yeah? And then there's the final stage, step number 8, is samadhi, where we are absorbed in pure consciousness. We're absorbed in our nature. We are that nature. Yeah? So in answer to Lucy's question, and I know this is a very long answer, and I haven't started what I wanted to do yet, really, but in answer to that, no, this process goes, if you can see, it goes in. You're going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper in. And as you're going deeper and deeper in, you're actually moving from the world of the physical through your emotions into the lower mental plane and into the upper mental plane. Remember from the talk on death? So you're actually going through all the dimensions, all the way back to your causal body. You are, when you're doing these processes. That's the distance we're traveling. It's actually no distance at all, because we're just going from there to there, on the inside, you could say. And yet we're moving the greatest distance conceivable, possibly, all the way back to our source. Yeah? So that's an inward moving process. Now, whether we do that in life through meditation and through practices, or we just don't give a hoot about that, and we just want to be concerned with our external affairs, and then we wait for death eventually to catch up with us, it's at that time then that we will have to do it. So then we will have to face that, because we will have to travel through all these different realms and dimensions within us to get back to the causal plane, remember, where we started. So we will all have to do this, either here on earth or after life. But it is much, much, much better to do it here. It's easier. Yeah. Now that may sound like a contradiction, but it is easier to do it here, more powerful. So this is what we call the inward journey, or the inward arc, and it goes towards essence. Now when we arrive at essence, it's not like we're just still and there's nothing happening and we're just resting forever, like some Christian idea of eternal rest in heaven, or anything like that. When we come back to our essence, this is where we start to become really active. This is where we actually are then dynamic. And it's said that the planes above the causal plane, which if you remember were the Buddhic, Atmic, and the Monadic plane, are planes of intense creative activity. Intense. So it's not that this is just necessarily still, because when we go into stillness, that stillness wants to move. And that stillness then creates a dynamism, and that then starts to express out into your life. Through this physical body, into the world. That's what you would call an enlightened being.
Kind of where I was cutting the question there, because that's what I was thinking, that actually that we're here on Earth like that to be creative, if you like. To
Yes.
use a creative tool.
We are,
So
absolutely.
that would then make sense then that you're working from a different place or
Yes.
more essential place.
Totally, yeah. In Sanskrit, they consider this to be lila. It literally means play. We're having a bit of a jolly. But we're just high on ecstasy and bliss. But yet we're dynamic and present because we are in our spiritual axis, which roots us into the earth, brings all our resources on board. We're fully here. And from that perspective, how we are as human beings now is that we're the walking dead. How we are now is asleep and inactive and dormant and dull. To various degrees, obviously, because, it's a spectrum. Compared to actually, when you're there, you're just totally at one with 100%, with your life force. You are life force energy. There is no fatigue, there is no tiredness, there is no depletion ever. You're full of light, inspiration, information forever. This is called Sat Chit Anand. Who's heard of this? Sat Chit Anand. Yes, Michael. Ashley, sorry. Yeah. This is who we are. We are Sat Chit Anand. Sat is our eternal beingness. Chit is our eternal knowledge. We know everything. We have infinite wisdom. We know everything. And Anand is bliss, or ecstasy, or ecstatic bliss. We are Sat Chit Anand. That is the nature of our Jivatma. That is the nature of our soul. Sat Chit Anand. It's who we are. So when you are that, it's like you are overflowing with all of that. And it's at that level that all of this reality, and all the stars, and all the galaxies, and everything on every level is created. It's created from the higher levels down. We have no idea here in physical incarnation how to construct another dimensional reality above us, such as the astral plane. We're completely in the dark when it comes to even what's going on at that level. All those levels and all that different division that we looked at before is created from the topmost level down. That requires an incredible amount of dynamism and energy to create something like a galaxy, for example. I mean, and that's just at the physical level. I mean, a galaxy exists simultaneously, all 7 planes, all 7 levels of reality, and all of those are created.
Those people on the planet who are creating the dysfunction and stuff and into power struggles, so presumably they know that at one level, but they're offered a tangent, getting it through money and control and wars and stuff, and really, I don't know if they're ever going to get here, are they? They're taking over a bit, aren't they? They're sort of taking over the world in some ways, the control.
Yeah, they're taking over the world, you're right, Colin. And the reason for that is because we are willfully ignorant as people, as a population, individually and collectively. We are willfully ignorant, I mean myself included. And I have been, and I stand guilty as charged. We have to acknowledge the fact that, we don't tend to our inner nature, and we have not tended to our inner nature. We tend to live an outer life, thinking that if we pursue pleasure in the world, or if we try and make the world right, everything will come right for us, without addressing the causative level, the causative plane which is inside of us. That is all part of our culture, it's part of our society, it's part of our conditioning. But it's not our nature. Conditioning is not nature. And this is where a lot of people get confused. They think, humans are, by their tendency, greedy, selfish creatures. Destructive creatures, you could say that, they think that's our nature. That's not our nature, that's our conditioning. Our nature is Sat Chit Anand, eternal knowledge and bliss. That's our nature. That's just a conditioned mindset. But we're born into that by our society, by our family, by our culture, we're brought up in it. So it seems like it's natural to us by the time we're probably 7. It's anything but natural. I get this with clients a lot. They even argue with me sometimes. I think, don't argue with me. I haven't got time for this. So they'll say, something will come up, and then, it'll be like, something happened in your family. It's a typical one. Something happened in the family when you were younger, right? And they go, but that's just normal. That happened in my family. That's normal, isn't it? Yes, it's normal, but it's not natural. And they said, but it's okay, that's fine, it's perfectly natural. I said, no, it's not natural. So that's the distinction. Yeah, and the powers to be understand, particularly the Luciferians, they understand the nature of light, they understand the nature of truth, but they'd rather rule in hell than be a servant in heaven, you might say. They'd rather rule in hell. They know the reality, they know how this reality is constructed, they understand our psyche intimately, and they know how to manipulate us individually and collectively, and they do. I don't know if anybody here can
Is
deny.
that who those guys were who came to see you?
Which guys? Oh, those guys, no, they were just some playful. There's some couple of guys having a joke. No, but they are of that mindset, though. They are of that mindset.
They were sent by the Luciferians.
Yeah, the dark Luciferian sent go and zap that guy. Yeah.
Are they actually aware that they're doing it? Who you're talking about?
No, the Luciferians are. Yes.
They are.
Yeah.
Who are these people?
Well, there is a hierarchy on this planet. There is a hierarchy of structure. You could call this a hierarchy of power, and they are usually at the top. The Luciferians are right at the top of this hierarchical structure. It's a compartmentalized. Who's heard of the pyramid of power? Yeah, it's a pyramid basically. Yeah. And as you go up the pyramid, power is more concentrated, but more compartmentalized from what is going on lower down in the pyramid. So from the top you can look all the way down and see what's happening, but from the bottom you can't see beyond your compartment. And we here at the bottom rung of this pyramid of power, we are at the bottom rung. We are the most controlled, you might say, through these systems that I was touching upon last week. So at the bottom here there's the mass of people, you might say, and at the top is the very few. What you might call the dark, Luciferians. And above that, actually, there's an invisible level. There's one invisible level above the pyramid of power. Even David Icke doesn't mention this. And in that invisible level, there is a chamber, and inside of that chamber sits one evil sorcerer. One evil sorcerer that controls the whole thing.
From this planet?
Yeah, absolutely, from this planet. In fact, there's been a device that's been around, for at least 5,000 years this device has been around that'll actually show you this evil sorcerer. It's amazing, and most of us are familiar with this device, but we hardly use it to penetrate into this realm. And you're wondering what it is, aren't you? Yeah, what do they call it?
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola, no, yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like LSD, It's called a mirror.
What?
A mirror.
Mirror.
Yeah. The mirror will show you because you see, inside of us we have the same tendencies, and that's how this game is played out. We are all heavily, heavily scarred, samscarred. And the powers to be know how to manipulate us at the level of our emotional, samskaric consciousness. They know how to do that. And they give us the false idea that we can actually find fulfillment and happiness through the pursuit of an objective, external reality, through the negation of our inner inquiry. And that's the whole game. Bigger cars, more money, nicer clothes.
So when does we get the angel of light?
When do we?
Where are they? I mean, in that pyramid thing, where are the angels?
Oh, this is a pyramid of power and control. They are not in that
No,
pyramid.
no.
And as soon as you start to enter into these kind of processes, you're also not in that pyramid. Yeah, that's the idea behind this. It's based upon a principle in Sanskrit called mukti. Mukti literally means to liberate one's mind, to unshackle and to release oneself from the powers to be, no matter what. I mean, it's been much worse than this in history. This is not the worst or the darkest time, although it is pretty grim in some respects, I have to say. Yeah? But for those that are looking for enlightenment, for those that are looking for truth, it's actually a wonderful time. It's wonderful because never before have we had so much available to us. I mean, like this sort of thing we're doing here. I mean, going back 100 years even, maybe just 50 years, maybe even, 30 years even, I don't know. This would have been completely out there. Yeah, but now it's like, wow, okay, anyone can understand it. You can just grab it, you can just Google anything these days and it's just there. So it's not that we don't have the information, we have more information, as Eckhart Tolle once said, than the Buddha ever had. We have more information now than the Buddha ever had. Yeah? It's available. It's just willful ignorance that keeps us in the darkness. So, we don't want to, and we don't want to spend our energy, we don't want to definitely spend any time on this, and we definitely don't want to spend much money. We'd rather not. So it's our, and I'm pointing to myself here as much as anybody else. We'd rather stay in this place of ignorance and darkness for the most part. We do. Just side with our samskaras and our innate nature. We did the 3 natures last time. I'm hopefully going to touch upon that a bit more this time. The 3 gunas. So the tendency with all of us towards ignorance, towards tamagun, towards darkness. And the powers to be know this, and they cultivate it, and they play a game through the media, through the world, that actually encourages this most base, bestial, shadow, dark side of us to come forward all the time. Can you see? And that obscures the light from heaven, because our focus, our attention, and our life force energy is going there, and not where it should be.
What's the ultimate goal? Because once they've achieved all the control, there's nothing left for them.
I often wonder that, yeah. Where are they going to go next?
Yeah, what's the point?
And what are they going to do when they die? It's like...
yeah.
Help! It's like... yeah, it's just... Yeah.
Put out of existence.
Hmm?
I'll be put out of existence.
Put out of existence. Yeah, well, they may not be allowed back into this level, but unfortunately there's so many more that will fill their shoes once they leave.
Where's the good guys in the universe? Are they
Well, they're in this room.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is what we're starting here. This is the ultimate conspiracy theory. And I'm saying because this is what's behind all the conspiracy theories. Because the conspiracy theories also are saying, okay, let's make the outside world, let's make a few corrections here. Let's get it right, and things will be good. But I'm saying no, they won't. Because as long as we have those tendencies within ourselves, for ignorance and darkness, it'll just revert back. It has to, because our thoughts, our feelings will translate into behaviours that will just create the whole destructive cycle all over again. We have to root it out at the causative level. And this really, in terms of the physical universe, is what I call the plane of effects. The plane of effects. This is where we feel the effects. It's not the cause. We can't change things at the plane of effects because it's already happened or is in the process of happening. Can you see? You have to go to the cause. So fiddling around at this level is not going to really achieve anything. And that's why I get a bit annoyed with conspiracy theorists, because they're not really looking to the real causative levels. They do give it piecemeal, a little bit of attention, but nowhere near as much as they should. Most of their talk should be about that, with maybe 10 minutes at the end about what the dark t-shirts are doing. Rather than the other way around, which is like, oh, this person has done this, and this has happened historically, and this is what the Fed's about, this is what the bank of it, for hours, and at the end, let's meditate. Should be the other way around. That's my personal feeling. Anyway, on with today's talk. I'm going to put up a mantra.
Can I just say, I felt the other night from tuning in that's what you're talking about, what's going on, this whole destructive, is the dark side, the shadow of the masculine,
Yes.
of being completely cutting out the feminine, and that ultimately it's self-healing. It's can go nowhere further after all the destruction back to the nothingness. It's this longing again to penetrate, to go back to the feminine, and it's this cycle. It sorts itself out. After that total destruction, there's the realization. Well, you're back to the original source, so nothing is lost. But that's where everything comes from, and that's the source of everything. I sort of wrote about it, and it suddenly made sense.
Yeah. Ideally, in a way, it's bringing the masculine and feminine together as the beloved and the lover.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is at the essence of Tantra. This is the essence of Tantra. It's the essence of it. Basically, Tantrics and yogis and babas, they're only looking to travel around about a metre. Ever. It's just from the base of the spine to the base of the cranium. And that's the whole distance. But it may take them hundreds of lifetimes, all of us. I mean, we've been here before, and we wouldn't be here if we hadn't had an interest in this previously, I believe. And we're only travelling that short distance, about a metre. It's incredible, within us. Yeah. And that brings the feminine and the masculine together. Because the whole game around mind control and about the Illuminati and about conspiracy is this. It keeps us in one hemisphere of our brain or the other, but never will balance us in the middle. So we tend to, in the West, be predominantly over onto the left brain consciousness, logical, rational, reasonable, thinking mind. We're locked into this. It's like a left brain prison for most of us. And the right brain is being shut down, either partially or completely in some individuals. What happens when you're here is that if the left brain becomes dominant, it hands its control over to the reptilian brain. So left brain dominance, the executive control, becomes about survival, the reptilian brain. And you see this. Our whole social, cultural structure is based upon that left brain thinking world, and it's all survival based. The right brain, which you could say is the feminine side, is the more artistic, creative, gestalt brain. But here, we cultivate the energy of naivety and subservience. Here we want to be the dominator. Yeah, in our left brain, we want to have control. But here we're just happy to be subservient, willing slaves. And we're very naive. We don't discern or distinguish with anything. We don't look at anything closely. So we just accept. But the control here from the right brain is handed to the limbic system, which is the emotional brain. So when we're in right brain consciousness, we operate off our emotional center only. And the left brain can be closed down. So we can't look at anything in terms of distinguishing anything and separating out anything in terms of truth. We just accept. Yes?
In the chart, Paul, you had both of them with solipsism.
Solipsism, yeah.
How does that work?
Solipsism is the
'Cause
idea...
it seemed like all the other ones are more or less opposite.
Yes, they are.
And yet...
We can be solipsistic in both sides of our brain. I'll just finish this and I'll get to solipsism. Yeah, because the idea really is to come to the middle. Can you see? The idea is to come to this middle ground, and that's where we find the stillness. Now, I'm going to get to that now, because it's just mantras in a moment, but who knows what solipsism is? Lucy, you do, don't you?
What is it?
Solipsism.
Solipsism.
Oh, you don't know?
I think
Oh, you looked as if it did. You do.
It's kind of a torpor or some sort of, I don't know, sleepy quality.
No,
No,
no. You're thinking of soporific,
I'm probably thinking
as in
of
Peter
that.
Rabbit.
Yeah.
After eating all that lettuce.
I'll go to sleep now.
Yes, goes to
Okay.
sleep, yes.
Solipsism is singleness.
Yes,
Singleness.
yeah. It comes from the word sola or solos, which means alone. Which means that basically, as I see reality, reality is. So this is a form of relativity that everyone has their own unique reality, unique perspective, view, unique beliefs of the world. And this is separate and independent from what is actually true and real. Solipsism says basically if you believe something and you feel it's true, then it's true for you.
Now I can see what's in both.
Yeah, because you can come at that conclusion from both.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a principle that was very much espoused by the satanic world, because ultimately they want us all to buy into this idea of solipsism. So there are no universal laws, because as the individual defines is how things are, and we can just define things according to our own inner compass, however bent out of shape that is. That's what solipsism basically says. This is true for me alone, solos, I'm on my own, and everybody is. And that just creates chaos. It creates chaos, and it's a world of chaos because everybody is saying, look, there's no fundamental spiritual reality, there is no truth, there are no natural laws, we can just make it up as we go along.
Sort of anarchy.
Well, anarchy literally means...
Spiritual anarchy.
Yeah, well, anarchy actually is an interesting word as well, because it means without rulership. But it's not a denial of your own sovereignty. So anarchy is without external rulers, basically. Can you see? So we have no external rulers in an anarchistic society. Why? Because we are sovereign beings and we don't need rulers. We have our own moral compass perfectly intact and we work in harmony with natural laws. Solipsism doesn't do that. It doesn't work in harmony with natural laws. It says everyone just makes up their own rules as they go through life. And that's good. It's one of the fundamental cornerstones of the New Age world and the New Age philosophy is this idea that, hey, you know, you can just make it up as you go along and it's fine. If it works for you, run with it. But it's a total disregard for universal law and for what is known as natural law. It says there is no universal law, and that is true. There is universal law. Who can deny it? Even a baby, if it crawls to the edge of a precipice and falls, the law of gravity will operate. You can't escape, you know, universal law. You know, it works whether you like it or not. That's the deterministic component of reality. And there's another component of reality, which is the chaos component, which is free will. So we're not like robots where we're just conditioned by these natural laws. We have free will to explore within natural law, but we sure as hell will get our fingers burnt if we try and contravene the natural laws and go against the natural laws, which is how we're living now. That's why we're causing so much pain, that's why we're causing so much suffering in the world. And solipsism is behind it because it says, actually, you know, this is our perspective, this is what we think is true as a petrochemical industry or as a pharmaceutical industry, and you can have your idea and that's true for you. Therefore, it's all justifiable.
One with the most marbles at the end wins.
In a way, yes. Yeah. But your moral compass is set, it's relative morality. Your sense of what is right and wrong is defined by what you think is right and wrong, rather than what actually is right and wrong, according to natural law or universal law. And our whole job as human beings is to align ourselves to natural law as quick and as fast as we can. And that's not usually a process which is very easy, because most of us do that kicking and screaming. Because a lot of what we're doing is not conducive to natural law, to our well-being and the well-being of the planet. So it requires a high degree of honesty. Anyway, getting into preacher mode here, but not meaning to go down that path too much. I wanted to get into mantras, because really this is about practice, and I want to really focus on that rather than you guys just listening to me talking every week, which has been great. But I think it's good if we can bring it back and just rein it in a little bit and just focus where we need to place the focus. Unless anybody's got any burning issues or burning questions about any of that. Are we all okay?
I need a wee.
Oh. Okay, 45-second break. I was listening to someone this last week, a teacher of mine I was listening to, and he was saying basically it's like if you imagine a planet where people are constantly self-inflicting themselves all the time with self-injury, self-harm. Yeah? On that planet, they may have a solution for this, and it's called bandages. And they'll have maybe 47 different varieties of bandages, depending upon what kind of self-harm the individuals are inflicting upon themselves, right? So yes, that is exactly the society we have. You know, we have basically a bandage society, you know? No one's looking at causation. Hardly ever, especially not in the media, my God. You know, they never go there. They never want to question as to what's underneath this. Right, anyway, talking of underneath. I'm trying to do this phonetically. This is your favourite mantra, John. Bag. Okay, I'm going to switch gears here. I get terribly excited about all this mental stuff. We'll still engage the mind, but we'll hopefully use it in more of a capacity as a servant that will facilitate our movement towards stillness. So I'm trying to put this on here phonetically, so I hope it's readable. I'm going to chant this for you like I did last time. And I'm going to chant this 3 times, as it's exactly pronounced. This is a mantra. And this is a mantra that was actually given to a very young boy many, many thousands of years ago. He was only 5. And he was the youngest son of a king. But the king favoured the eldest son. And you wouldn't let this little boy, who was called Dhruva, sit on his lap. And at 5, you could imagine he was very upset because his daddy wouldn't let him sit on his lap. So he decided that what he was going to go and do was he was going to go to the forest and become a yogi, and he was going to worship God, or as they say in Hinduism, Narayan or Vishnu. And he was basically going to go and live this ascetic life away from civilization because he was so distressed he just couldn't possibly continue his life in the palace any longer. It disturbed him intensely. So one day he just up and left. He was only 5, and he was walking out of the city along a road going towards the forest. And as he was walking, one of the great celestial sages who was flying around in the heavenly airways, I assume, spotted him. There was a great sage called Narad. And Narad decided that actually this is not really an appropriate activity for a little boy that's only 5, to go and live in the forest full of all kinds of perils and vicious creatures. You know, I surely have to go and counsel this boy and send him back home. So he came down from heaven and he lighted on the earth in front of Dhruva as Dhruva was willfully walking along, and tried to dissuade him from his life of becoming a yogi or an ascetic at 5. But Dhruva absolutely was determined. He was not going to be dissuaded by Narad. And he said to him, actually, you can help me rather than dissuade me. Why don't you encourage me? Give me a mantra that can liberate me from this world. And Narad taught him this mantra. It took him 4 months and he was completely enlightened. And that's another story, which we'll get to maybe in time. What he did in those 4 months and how he was using this mantra. That's a very, very powerful mantra. And this mantra is one that we used to chant in the ashram in the temple in India at the beginning of every class. So the secret really to learning wasn't to actually come as an intellect, as a rational sort of thinking human being to a class or to a lecture, but was to use the power of mantra to awaken both sides of the brain simultaneously. And then we could really be whole-brained and we could take in the information intellectually and also intuitively at the same time. And that's what this mantra did. And that's why we always used to do it at the beginning of lectures and classes. And it was very powerful, and it opened the door really, for us I suppose you could say, to really deep, profound learning and experiences. Not just the information, but the experiences that information brought with it, that awoke within us as feelings in our body. So I'm going to chant this 3 times, as I did last time, and I want us all just to listen to the mantra and to the pronunciation that how I'm chanting this. And then you guys are going to do it all together. We'll do it, and we'll see how that also feels. Okay? So this is for you guys when we get to that stage. So first I'm going to do it. We'll have a little silence, see how that feels, and then we're all going to do it together. It works in a certain harmonic principle, and these harmonies or these sounds are actually already inside of us. That's why it works like magic. Every chakra, I've put them here specifically, has a certain number of petals. Every petal makes a unique vibration. That vibration of that petal, of that chakra, is a single letter in the Sanskrit alphabet, which makes Sanskrit a vibrational language based upon inner vibration. Sacred language. There are 50 petals, not including the Sahasrara, which is the crown, which has 1,000 or more. There are 50 petals from 1 through to 6 in our chakra system, if you count them all. 50 letters to the Sanskrit alphabet. And that comprises the entirety of their language. Every word is constructed out of these single syllable sound vibrations. We're all familiar with Om. This is pertaining to the Ajna center, or the third eye. It activates this, and this is always an invocation at the beginning of these mantras. But you can all feel how your nervous system, because I was telling you this at the beginning, our nervous systems are geared and orchestrated and designed for enlightenment and for stillness. And you can see how quickly we all went there with that vibration, right? And that's why the ancients, they call these mind tools. Mind tools. So should we have a go and see if we can get the group energy stirred up a little bit and see how that affects us? So again, we'll do the same thing, but all together. This time, you know, I'll lead. You can follow me, and you can read it. Is that readable?
It's not the right. It's not the same words.
Oh, it's not the same.
The same as you did.
You've missed a bit out, haven't you?
Namo Bhagavate. Oh, I missed Vasudevayara, didn't I? Yeah. Yeah. Who's got a tissue or something?
There's tissue behind you on the table. Sorry, the other table.
Oh, yeah.
Behind the table.
Yeah, I missed a whole bit out there, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that part of it with sound healing and gongs and things? Is
That's
that
it.
because I can feel like the cells vibrating? It's like a tingling. It
Just from what I did then.
then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
From
it.
when you hear the sound vibration, I feel I guess my body and my cells responding.
I'm totally responding. Yeah, because your cells will be kind of going, yippee!
Yeah.
You know, it's like, we recognise this vibration.
Sing with it almost, you
One
know.
of my favourite things is like the Tibetan bowls. When they just
Tibetan bowls,
I
yeah,
know they're
yeah.
doing something, but
Yeah, yeah, that's all the same principle. Yeah. Because the Tibetan culture, you know, was a culture also that was rooted in Sanskrit and the use of sound. You know, that's why mantra meditation can be one of the most potent and powerful forms of meditation. And it's why I had my... Oh boy, I pulled it down now, didn't I? How much? Maybe I won't get into this time. I had a picture of time up there. Should we do this talk on time and soon? Maybe not next week, maybe in a month I'll do a talk on time. And you'll understand. Because mantra is specific for this time, what's called the Yuga or the Kali Yuga that we live in right now. Who's heard of this term Kali Yuga?
Yeah.
You have? Do you know what it is?
Isn't it the time of darkness?
Darkness, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pertaining really, you might say, to the feminine. So it's a feminine time in a way, which is not a time of darkness at all. You remember the two paths? Yeah, it's just from the expression of light, it looks like it's dark, which are the previous yugas.
Yeah.
So in
Is it
India,
Satyuga, is it?
Satya Yuga is the first one. Yeah. So in India and in Vedic culture, going back 5,000 years and even longer, they saw that time was not a linear thing like we think about it here in the West, where we go from past to the present to the future and it's in a straight line. They saw time as feminine, cyclical, like seasons. And they described primarily 4 seasons that our consciousness moves through. Plato also talked about these in Grecian times, about what he called the Great Ages.
Velikovsky also talked about them.
Yeah, they're common. And the further back in time you go, from this point, the more enlightened man was. Up to a point, I'm going to have to show you this, aren't I? Otherwise, you're not going to be, I'm going to be fumbling around with words here, but you can look at it as a diagram. Where is it? Oh, here it is. There we go. Let's put it on my man. Okay. So we're here, present time. This age we live in right now is called the Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga, it means the age of darkness. Plato likened this to bronze, the metal bronze. This Kali Yuga we've been living in since 700 BC. 700 BC to this present time. We're in the stage, or a transition stage right now, to what is known as the next age, or the next Yuga, as they call them, or ages. You see the word here, Yuga, which is the Dwapara Yuga. Oh, sorry, this is the Iron Age, sorry, and that's moving into the Bronze Age. So Dwapara Yuga. And then we have, after the Dwapara Yuga, we have the Silver Age, or the Treta. Then after the Treta Yuga, we have a Satya Yuga, which is the Golden Age again. And then consciousness is at its peak. So this is a time of awakening and remembrance, the ascending arc through these 4 great time periods. Yeah, from Kali to Dwapara to Treta to Satya. And then we go into the descending side again, which is where we were historically. So consciousness is going into forgetfulness here. It's going into ignorance and darkness as it comes down on the descending arc. Everything in reverse this time, going from Satya to Treta to Dwapara back to Kali. So we've gone through the darkest time, and we're in this exact point here where we're transiting into the next age. Yeah, it sort of corresponds with Aquarius in the zodiacal system. Yeah. Well, the point is that different processes were appropriate at different times because each time gave what was called a different virtue, a different quality of ability and capacity within the mind. And a lot of these abilities are the abilities that we see examples of in terms of pyramids and you know, all these stone structures we can't explain. These were because the mental virtues of the people at that time were so great that they had the capacity to do things that we can't imagine now. But they lost that capacity as time progressed. That's why these cultures always started very high and very evolved and then degraded. Can you see? So each culture actually spawned a new culture, which was at its zenith to start with, and then it lost as we moved through time in this descending arc to the Kali Yuga, which is where we are now, which is this age of darkness. Yeah, which is why when we look back in history, we see most of what's going on here, which is an age of war and turmoil and chaos, basically. Most of the scriptures come from this time here in the Treta and Dwapara Yuga. So they come from a time which is much more enlightened and where consciousness is much more awake. That's why the ancient knowledge, going back through time, is much more relevant. Can you say? Rather than anything that's been created in the last, well, 1,500, 1,400 years, you could say. Because anything that's been created in this time period has been created in the time of the darkest and the least awake state. Yeah. So in the Kali Yuga, the reason for going into this right now is not to give you an overview of the talk, because we go into this in detail in the talk, but the overview here really is in the Kali Yuga, what is the most powerful tool for meditation is mantra. It is a prescription for this time. It suits our nervous systems and our tendencies and our bodies most precisely. This mantra. That's why it has such a powerful effect so quickly. I put some mantras in the brochure last week, and we're going to do maybe one or two. We'll do that as well. So yoga and all these processes are a natural expression of an enlightened nervous system. So where all the yoga postures came from and all this stuff came from was from trial and error over the course of many, many thousands of years. The individuals doing what they thought was right, practicing it, and then seeing what the result was. But of course, going back through time, they were able to see literally what the result was, because they could see into their chakras, they could see into their energy fields, they could see into nature, and they could notice it immediately. They had that perception. And actually these tools also, by the way, if you wanted to develop psychic abilities or healing abilities, are some of the best tools that you can use as well. Because it will awaken those tendencies. So even we're living down here, in our energy we can be here or here. Yeah, we'll talk about this in the talk on time, because this is only a map for the collective of humanity. But any one individual can step outside this map through practice at any time. And we can be living a life in the Satya Yuga, inwardly, in the middle of the darkest of darkests, in the Kali Yuga.
With the chanting, I've become quite aware of the knots in my body, and I feel probably it's highlighting it, or the more you would chant, you would start to uncoil.
Unknot.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't get into samskaras, did we, so much, which is what I really was thinking to do in the first 5 or 10 minutes when I was talking tonight. But those knots you're talking about are our samskaras, and we'll do samskaras next time. But that is the effect it has, because it brings our neurology into balance. And when our neurology is in balance, it's like the masculine and the feminine are in harmony with each other. Yeah? The feminine principle is the principle I call of non-aggression, and the masculine principle is the principle of protection. So we have the capacity of non-aggression and protection, and we need both. Yeah, and they come together, and mantras really bring them together nicely. And then you start to bring the light from your causal astral mechanism, and those samskaras start to break up, those knots, they start to, or you start to become aware that I'm holding here, or I'm holding here, or I feel a bit tight here.
And their fears, I can feel their fears or anxieties that aren't quite trusting, or,
That's it, yeah.
And they're stuck there in various places, yeah. And
That's
that's where I feel more breath is needed, like I need to breathe deeper into those places.
Yeah, absolutely right. Bring more prana, more breath, more light into those places. It breaks up those samskaras. This is a samskara breaking mechanism. This is what breaks the samskaras, is light. And this is how to get light into your body and into your cells. It's the fastest way that I know. If anybody knows anything better, then I'm open to hearing it. But it's the fastest way that I know of doing this.
Listening to them, I suppose. Do they have them on a CD? The various,
Yes. I need to put the link on my website. You can go and listen to these on CDs. You can download them as MP3s.
All right.
From the internet. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
In the links section of my website, you'll see the links are there.
All right.
So you go to inneralchemy.eu, go to home, and then links, and everything you need there is there in terms of resources, the background to a lot of this
Because
information.
you do need to know how to actually deliver this, the different mantras, don't you?
Yeah,
It's important how you deliver.
it is. You have to get it exactly right.
Yeah, yeah.
The pronunciation can't be off.
I mean more the pitch and.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Well, everyone has a natural pitch, I feel, like I was saying, and that does vary as well a little bit. But when you get confident, then you can do it. So let's just let's do that on the 8 limbs there. So these are the mantras that I've given you with the phonetic pronunciation for each of the mantras. We normally go to the Sarasvati mantra first, because it's Sarasvati that bestows the ability to chant mantras. Traditionally it is said that she will empower us, because Sarasvati is to do with one of the petals here in the throat. Yeah, uses a lot of the sounds that, or opens a lot of this centre really, you could say works on this chakra centre. That's the Sarasvati mantra. So once you've got this activated, you can really then pronounce these mantras really powerfully and really well. In fact, the sages, going back through time to previous ages, they could say a mantra and it would have an immediate effect in the world. Yeah. And that's where speaking can actually change reality immediately. That's the power they had. So they say whatever they speak is always true. And it was always aligned to natural law, of course. So that was the power these guys had. They just had to say it once and it would manifest or change something. Yeah. Okay, so these are the mantras. They're all in your book. The other ones that we have here from last week are the chakra sounds. Okay, so how are we doing? We're going to do a little practice. We're going to go through the whole thing again, a little bit deeper than we did last time. So for those that weren't here last week, this will be new to you, but I'm going to keep it really simple and do the whole thing again like no one's heard it. Okay? Actually, by the way, has anybody been doing any practices this last week? Yes? Anything to report?
During the night when I can't sleep, my mind's active.
Yes?
I just do the om.
You do the Om, yeah, the deep meditation.
But sometimes my mind flies away again, you know.
Okay.
Tossing and turning. And,
Yeah. Okay. John?
Yeah, lots of real bliss feelings, it's really beautiful.
A bliss. Oh, great. Wonderful. Very good. Very good.
Well, carrying on with some of the other stuff from Yogananda.
Yes, Yogani was the source of the information I'm getting here. It seems to me this is in the line of Paramahamsa Yogananda. So Yogani, he's my teacher when it comes to this material. Again, his link is on my website if you want to go and source his material and get more information and more processes, if you like, around all of this. But we will cover them all here in these talks, or at least I will, as long as there's interest. So yeah, come back and bring some friends, and we'll get more into all these different processes as the weeks go by. So this is just doing the very sort of basic sort of skeletal structure at this point. But there's a lot more to this that can amplify these processes considerably. But not to take that on too early, because as I say, it can overload and overstimulate the nervous system. Jane?
Yeah, I found that the breathing in particular, coming up to the third eye and then taking it back through and down again, I find it absolutely amazing.
You found it amazing?
Really
Great.
good for focus, actually.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I
And
know.
I have stopped eating meat.
Oh, you went? You went with the yoga,
I did,
not
yeah,
the yoga, sorry, the gunas.
Yes, and I hadn't actually set out to do that, but I have in the
Okay,
last week.
yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I have to put aside, well, I don't have any sort of judgment around that myself. I'm just having to present information as actually that is taken from the Bhagavad Gita, but it's in all of the scriptures. You can read about the gunas and the 3 modes of nature. Yeah. So for those that weren't here last week, the idea is that we have to be in a mode of goodness in order that we can go to pure goodness, and we can't. If we're in a lower mode of being, like passionate or ignorant, we can't just go straight to pure goodness. So from a place of being ignorant and dark and dull, we have to move up to being passionate and active. And then from that place, then we have to move up to a place of goodness, where we're, caring and compassionate and kind. And then from that place we can get to transcendental consciousness, enlightenment. And we can't step over, we can't go straight from ignorance to high consciousness, for example. We have to go through what the ancients called the gunas, or the trigunas, the three modes of material nature. And they have a prescription as to how you can actually encourage or enhance the mode of goodness considerably. So it makes it easier then for meditation, it makes it easier for spiritual processes if you're already on that platform of goodness. And there are various things. One of them is food, but there are lots of prescriptions. We can get to this another time. I actually put a little chart on the page last time. Again, taken from the Bhagavad Gita. Where is it now? Oh, there it is. There we go. So you can see these are kind of prescriptions, really, that will actually take us to that place of goodness, that then we can very easily get the immediate benefits of spiritual practice. It's this little chart here. But for those that are interested in the trigunas, we will cover them at a future talk another time. Not enough time tonight because I want to get the practices done. Are we all okay with that? But well done. Yeah? Yeah.
Is that sattvic diet?
Yeah, this is ignorance, passion, goodness, and this is pure goodness. So you have tamas in Sanskrit, rajas, sattva, and sudasattva.
Okay.
Yeah. And these are the expressions of nature. These are expressions of our physical body. Yeah, and our emotions and our mind. This is natural expression. So tamas, really, you could say, is the destructive force. Rajas is the creative force, because passion to get things done. Sattva is a force that maintains. Yeah, and then this is transcendence, of course. But you can see here, basically, I've given some basic definitions as to what each of these qualities of nature are. And this is a chart here in terms of how we can more easily cultivate the quality of sattva, because ultimately we're looking to eliminate the tamas and the rajas and come to sattva in order that we can step into sudasattva more readily. Yeah. We live in an age, really, which is down here. Yeah, tamas, darkness, ignorance. Yeah. Okay. Ooh. No, it's going to come down. Let me take that down. We'll get into the trigunas, I think, another time. So let's go further forward. So great feedback. Thank you for that. So what are the practices?